Welcome to another MicroBit tutorial. This tutorial we're going to look at variables and how we can use those variables, bits of data in our programs, to store things which we want to be able to use. The first thing we're going to go on to is obviously the Make Code MicroBit site. I hope you're here already. And then we're going to make a new project. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this part of our program to start off with. So, as before, click and hold and drop it into the recycle bin. Now, this program, what we're going to be creating is a scorekeeper. So when someone pushes the A button, it will add a score to player A, and when they push the B button, it will add a score to player B. If for any reason there is a tie, by pressing both A and B at the same time, it will score a tie. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our variables. Now in our basic tab, we're going to click onto variables, and we're going to click on make variable. Remember, this is going to store the data, so it's going to store our player scores. And let's give this name something that is going to be easily identifiable. So I'm going to call this player score A. That way we know it's about player score and we know it's about player A. Make sure you give your names which are suitable, which are clear, and they can then help you keep track of what you're actually trying to do. Click OK. And then we need to make another variable for player score B. And another variable, this will score our tie, so this will be player tie score. So there I have my three variables now. They're now within this program. So each time we go back into our variable section, you'll see we can do things with our data, with our variables. The first thing you need to do with all of your variables in your programs is to something called initialize. That means that we're going to set them with a value to start off with. So of course at the beginning of a program we want it to set it to 0. We don't want player A starting with a score of 3, do we? So we can use the set player score here by dragging this on. So on start, player tie score to 0, that's fine. But we need to set the other two. How are we going to change the variable name? So inside this box here, we can change the variable name. And lastly, we're going to add player score B. Now this program is going to keep a score for player A, player B, and the number of ties they have. So in our program we need to keep track of the number of times each player wins and the number of times they tie. We're going to use this by using our buttons. So the next thing we need to do is to add inputs into our program. We're going to go into the input section where we can find our inputs, and we're going to go button A. And then we're going to get an input for our button B. And then we're going to use both buttons at the same time. To induce a tie score. So let's go ahead and change the for B. And this one is for button A and B. Now each time button A is pressed, we want to add 1 to the player score A, because at the minute it starts at 0. We can go into the variable section and we can change the score, so we can change this in a minute by 1. So let's bring this into here. And here we go, we can change this to player score A, because they're all our variables, the 3 variables that we made, by 1. Of course, you can change this to any value you want, but we only wanted to go up 1 at a time. So I'm going to repeat this for each of our different buttons. This is the tie score, and last one, this is for player B. Now this program will add scores to our variables, but nothing's going to be displayed on the screen. So there's not a lot of user feedback, as in feedback to you as the user of this device or this program. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to add to our buttons, we're going to display something on the screen. So each time button A is pushed, it will add 1 to our player score, and then we're going to get it to display the letter A onto the screen, or the LEDs. This way, when you push the button A, you'll know that A has in fact added 1 to his score. So we're going to go into Basic, and we're going to use Show LEDs, and I'm just going to make the letter A. So letter A. I'm going to repeat this for player B and buttons A and B, or the tie. But B, and then a T for tie. Now the last thing to do, each time we push a button, we don't want the letter A to stay on the screen. So you want to use the clear screen function to clear the screen each time one of the symbols is displayed on the LEDs. So we can use the clear screen, which is in the More. So clear screen. Each time one of our buttons is pushed, we're going to add 1 to their score, or to this variable that's going to keep the score. We're going to display the name to the screen, and then we're going to clear the screen. Now at the end of the game, we want to know the scores. So lastly, in our little program here, we're going to add another type of input, because we've used A button, B button, and A and B buttons. We're going to use another type of input, which is something on the MicroBit, which is a shake function. So when you shake the MicroBit, it knows that you're shaking the MicroBit, and you can get it then to display or to do something on the MicroBit. So let's add in this input field here. So I'm going to go to Input, and then I'm going to go down to On Shake. So this will determine when the MicroBit is shooken, we will then display the scores, or the final scores, at the end of the program. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to show the LEDs on the screen first, followed by a number, and that number will be the number of wins that that particular player has. So rather than rebuilding this, you can duplicate. So if I right click and use duplicate, which means to copy, I'm going to duplicate it. There it is there. So I'm going to add that into my on shake. So the letter A is going to be displayed, and then I want to display the number of wins. So to display this, we now need to use a basic function which will show a number. Here's a number. The number we want to display is not 0, but we want to display this piece of data here, the player score A variable. So we can use the variable from our variable section, and there's our variable, player score A. Now we can drag this and pop this into our show number section. So this will display the letter A, and then it will then show the score. So we want to display the score to the screen, but we want to add a pause as well, because if we then move on to showing player B's score, it's not going to give anyone a chance to read what they actually scored. So we can pause our program, and the pause function is in our basic part. So basic, and then pause. This will pause the program for so many milliseconds. 100 milliseconds is very, very fast still. So let's change this up to 1 second. So now we need to add in our other scores, very similar way. So we're going to duplicate this. We're going to duplicate this. So player B scores, and then we're going to show a number. Show a number. And we want to use the variables for player B. And for tie score. And we want to add in our pauses. Of 1 second. So, a large program. So let's quickly recap what this is going to do. On start, set all the variables, the data in our program to 0. It's then going to add a score to each variable each time you push the A or the B or both buttons together. When you shake the MicroBit, you'll display the letter A, and it will show what piece of data is in this variable. Pause, and then it will repeat this for each of the B and T. And the last thing we need to do is we need to clear the screen at the very end. So there's our program. So let's have a look if it works. So we can add one to each. Let's add a couple to A, a couple to B, a tie, and now if we shake, A got 4, B got 2, ties got 0. And there we go. There's our program. Have fun and enjoy.